Because I have done plenty. I have done some that have failed. I have done some that have succeeded. And I've listened to hundreds.
Nice. Oh, perfect. Well, hopefully you'll be able to give us some nuggets of wisdom for all the teams on the call. I thought.
So Chelsea, remind me for the teams, remind me how much time they have for their pitch.
How much time they have for their pitch. So I'll take you through, I was just telling everybody how I was going to structure the call.
Oh, great. Sorry.
No, it's fine. And so what I'll do is I will take myself, and these guys through the pitch that we have, the pitch submission pages that we have. And in there are multiple questions that we ask. And then we also ask for people to submit a pitch deck. And we also ask people to submit a 3-minute video pitch. And anything over 3 minutes, I hope everyone's listening clearly, will not be considered. So we want you to keep it clear and concise. I was just saying, Bret, to everybody on the line, that we almost have 2,000 teams that are participating in this year's challenge. So we need to keep, we need to keep it structured. We need to keep it clear, people. We want to know why you should win. We want to know why you're unique. What are you doing that's different from everybody else?
Okay.
And why you should win. I thought I'd just kick off, though, with some nicer, kind of easy questions in terms of how can teams, in your experience, how can startups and how can teams and participants be unique in their pitch? In over all the years that you've been doing this, is there a formula that you can be unique? Is there a formula in your delivery? Is there a formula in your storytelling?
Yeah, great question. So is my audio okay? Chelsea, can you hear my voice?
It's literally perfect.
Perfect, great. Yeah, so first of all, I always sort of reject the notion of a formula in the sense that so many times my students at Stanford, they each give a 3-minute pitch at the end of the course, and of course they all want, they all say, so just send me a slide deck template. I want to know what a winning slide deck template looks like. And I sort of reject that notion because, first of all, it's not the slides that are going to sell the deal per se. It's the quality of the story that you're telling that's going to sell the deal, right? Mm-hmm. And then secondly, each of us has our own particular style, and each of us has our own particular story to tell. And so I sort of reject the notion of there being, some sort of a template or some sort of a pre-canned way to do a successful pitch. But having said that, let me say a couple of things that I do think are important. So to me, I think of the list of things that that perhaps should be in a 3-minute pitch. To me, the number one thing is, why are you exactly the right entrepreneur for this venture? Because an investor cares about, so at the end of the day, all an investor cares about is, will this be a successful investment, right? And one of the key predictors to whether or not this is going to be a successful investment is whether or not the entrepreneur sort of has the passion and has the drive to see this through to success, right? And so having some sort of personal connection with this cause, having some reason why you are exactly the right entrepreneur for this venture, I think is a really important thing. So sometimes you may have something very specific. So for example, I was once pitched by a woman, and she had a brother she grew up with a brother who had severe autism. So she's got a great deal of passion about this topic, and her startup is producing technology to help autistic kids to develop and better adapt to the world. And so in her case, it's really obvious that, she should lead with that. She should lead with the fact that she has a very personal connection to the problem that she's solving. Now, not everybody has that kind of really direct personal connection, but I do think that if you have any kind of a, claim to to the answer to the question of why are you exactly the right entrepreneur for this venture, then lead with that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is just to think about the story. Think about the fact that humans are hardwired to be all about the story, right? That's just part of what humans are. You know, we've been telling stories around campfires for several million years, so it's hard baked into our genes. And so, you know, rather than thinking that your 3-minute pitch is sort of going through a checklist of, you know, first I got to mention the market size, then I have to mention the problem we're solving, then I have to mention the solution we're solving, then I have to mention our customer acquisition cost and our lifetime value of a customer. You know, instead of thinking of it as being a checklist of things that you have to cover in 3 minutes, think of it instead as you got to tell a really great story in 3 minutes, because that's what's going to capture people's attention, and that's what they're going to remember. They're going to remember the great story that they heard.
Amazing. Thank you, Bret. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, guys, hopefully all of you have managed to check this out at some point since going live, which is the pitch submission page. I will share my screen for you all. Ta-da. So this is my profile. So it's obviously empty because I'm not participating. But we have clearly outlined exactly what you guys need to put in this pitch. Obviously everything is going to be so different, but we've kind of designed, even though Bret has said there's no exact formula, the way that you will be delivering each and every one of yours will be different. But we've tried to give you a guideline of how best to do this. So I'm gonna read these out and ask Bret to give us his advice on how he would go about doing this. Okay. So about your project, describe your project in 5 simple, clear, and precise sentences. And I have to tell you all there is word limits on this, so you have to be clear and precise. Okay. So we have: tell us about the problem you are solving. Explain how you are solving it. Describe the innovation that you have developed. You can see my screen, right? Yeah, okay, perfect. Tell us about the business model you're using, and tell us how your project is unique. So this may seem daunting when you have a huge vision ahead of you about what your project or your startup is. But never forget that whenever you are pitching, be it to a challenge or to an investor, you're only going to have limited amount of times regardless. So Bret, in your experience, when someone's trying to tell you to explain clearly in just a matter of a couple of sentences what it is that you are doing and solving, are there any tips to be precise? How can people be clear in what the problem is that they are solving and how they are doing it?
Well, I think as you already said, Chelsea, it's about you know, be concise, be brief. You know, nobody wants to hear you rattle on and on and on about gigawatts and kilohertz. You know, people just want to understand in simple terms what is the problem that you're solving. Why is it important? How are you solving it? What's innovative about it or unique about it? And you've got here, tell us about the business model. So to me, I always tell my students that there's really only 3 things people want to make sure they understand. They want to understand what is it, what problem does it solve, and how does it make money. So your business model part here is really sort of how it makes money. You know, even if it's incorporated as a nonprofit, it still has to have some sort of economics associated with it, right? Mm-hmm. So you know, what is it? What problem is it solving, and how does it make money? And you'd be surprised how many times I hear a pitch, and you know, they go on and on about the problem and the importance of solving the problem and yada yada yada. And at the end of the pitch, I still don't understand what it is that they've built. Have they built an app? Have they built a website? Have they built a set of clinics? I mean, I don't know what it is exactly. So being really clear and simple about what is it and what problem does it solve is super important, and it's often harder than you think it's going to be. That describing something simply is usually harder, right? Everybody can say it in 30 minutes. The question is, can you say it in 3 minutes? Because that's the hard part. But if as Albert Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't yet fully understand it. And so sometimes the process of figuring out how you would say it simply helps you to understand what it is you're working on.
Would you say, I think this is something called the mom test, isn't there? So it's kind of like, if you can go and explain it to your mother or your grandmother and they understand it, then you've cracked the code.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Yeah.
And for everyone online, I'll put this in the write-up afterwards as well, but that is the MOM test, which is MOM test. Have a look online. There's a lot of information about it online as well. Please do that. And also just do it to as many people as possible. Do it to your family members, do it to your neighbors, do it to your friends, because you're always going to get feedback on how you can deliver it better also. I'm going to go a bit down here. So when one of the questions that we're asking you to do is summarize your problem. What specific problem are you solving? And describe it in 2 clear and concise sentences. Use data, statistics where possible to make your point. Now, we're dealing with entrepreneurs, Bret, all across the entire globe who are actually trying to solve some of the world's biggest problems in food and agriculture.
Sure.
And this is something I have to reiterate because Christine had said it on her AMA yesterday, but one thing we're trying to avoid, Bret, is having people tell us that we need to sustainably feed the world 10 billion people by 2050. We know that.
Because we all know that, right? Right.
We all know that. So is there a way, if somebody has a problem that they are solving, is there a way that they can break the problem down clearly for us?
So when you were saying don't tell us we need to feed 10 billion people, because we already know that, I was thinking about how one of my other pet peeves is when I get a pitch from somebody who's working on a new, let's say it's a new t-shirt business. And they start with a slide that tells me that the worldwide market for clothing is $3 trillion. And I'm like, yeah, but that I know people buy clothes, but that doesn't really tell me anything about the market for your t-shirts, right? So it's the same sort of thing that we know we need to feed the planet, but that's, you got to be a little more specific about what specific problem you are solving and how you're solving it. Again, I think that the challenge here is just making it concise. So one of the best pitches that I ever received was a guy who actually met him at was an entrepreneur pitch event, and I met him at the reception afterwards. And I came up to him and I said, "So what are you working on?" And he took a sip of his drink and he said, "Well, there's a lot of there's a lot of grocery stores in the country." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay. There's a lot of grocery stores in the United States, right?" He said, the biggest single operating expense for a grocery store is cold storage. So this is the refrigerators and the freezers and such, right? And I'm like, okay, the biggest single operating expense for a grocery store, cold storage. Yeah, okay. We make a device that cuts that cost in half. Boom. I wanted to invest because in 3 just super short sentences, he told me the size of the market. There's a lot of grocery stores in the United States. Yeah, okay. He told me the problem to be solved. Cold storage is the biggest single operating expense. He told me the solution, which is they make a device that cuts that in half. Now, in fact, the device it's a cloud-connected device, and it senses all kinds of data inside the refrigerator it broadcasts it up to a cloud platform, and the cloud platform does a bunch of optimization stuff and broadcasts it back to the device, which controls the temperature inside the refrigerator, right? But if this guy had led with, if I said to him, to tell me what you're working on, if he had said to me, well, it's a cloud connected paradigm changing device for big data collection and analytics and predictive stuff, I would have been like, okay. But instead, he said, a lot of grocery stores in the country, biggest single operating expense is cold storage. We make a device that cuts that in half. I'm like, boom, I want to know more. That actually, in the I want to know more part brings me to another really important point that I'd like to make, which is that, so I'm a big believer in the idea that every presentation, every pitch, every meeting that you have, you need to be really clear beforehand of what your desired outcome is. What is my desired outcome from this meeting? Or what is my desired outcome from this pitch? And in the case of a 3-minute pitch, your desired outcome is really very simple, which is that you want the audience to feel as if they want to hear more. Because the whole purpose of a 3-minute pitch is for them to say, wow, I'd like to have a meeting and find out more, right? That's the purpose of a 3-minute pitch, is to have the person that you're talking to say, wow, I'd like to have a meeting and find out more. And so, again, you're not trying to tell every single corner of the story in 3 minutes. You're just simply trying to sell enough of a tease in 3 minutes that you sound legit, you sound passionate, and the audience says, I'd like to know more about this.
That's a brilliant point to make, actually. And for everyone that's online and listening, honestly, put us in a position where we want to know more, where we want to reach out, connect with you, tell us more what you're doing, your solutions, your innovations. That's a brilliant point to make. Thank you, Bret. I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen for a second because I've seen a few questions that have been popping up. So I'm going to have a little lean into these. The project has a broad objective. Work with many. Oh, so Anna, I assume this is coming from your team. Okay, so Anna, the project has a broad objective, quote, work with many traditional communities in the Amazon area, but we started with one specific community, the Kayapo indigenous community. Would you like the line between not focused / too many communities and not profitable enough? Oh, wait. Okay, so Anna re-asked that question. So the project has a broad objective. Work with many traditional communities. It's okay, Anna. Work with many traditional communities in the Amazon area, but we started with one specific community, the Kayapo indigenous community. Would you like to comment about the line between not focused / too many communities and not profitable enough? I'm not sure. Bret, could you maybe comment on that? I'm not sure. And I'm not 100% sure I understand your question.
Yeah, let me take a shot at it, okay. Which is that if I understand the question correctly, I think for me as an investor, what I care about is, have we piloted this on a small basis such that we actually have some empirical evidence that this will succeed? And can we scale it up big enough that the economics work, right? So I care about both of those things. And so if I understand the question correctly, you're asking about the fact you started with one specific community, but that there's a broad objective to work with many communities. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, I think that's, so I think one of the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs sometimes make is trying to boil the ocean, right? In other words, trying to do too much. And that if you look at entrepreneurs who are successful, most of the time, they are very laser focused on proving out their idea on a small scale in one community or with one market subset. And then once it's proven out there and ready to scale, then scale it up to many, many communities, many segments of customers. There's an engineering adage that you should design. It's an engineering adage that you should design large, implement small, meaning design in your head what this thing needs to look like at scale, but then implement it on a very small basis.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a really good point. And I think, always have long-term vision. I think here at TFF, we are definitely looking for solutions. Again, to reiterate some of the things that Christine said yesterday is, we like that kind of global approach. Is it a local solution that can be scaled on a global scale? And if you can always start thinking, you're going to be, as an entrepreneur, you will always look, and you can probably add more to this, Bret, but the best entrepreneurs look at what they can solve in their remit, what they can solve locally. They don't want to try and put themselves in a situation that they know nothing about and try to solve somebody else's problem. Sajeev, hello. As an early stage entrepreneur, one is always in a catch-22 situation. Without investment, you can't progress, but you can't get investment without progress. Is an MVP and lining up customers essential for investment, or are investors willing to take a risk on potential? Oh, that's a great question, Sajeev.
You can answer that one, Chelsea.
I think as an investor yourself, Bret, I think you're best positioned for that one.
So both happen, right? There are sometimes that investments get made where it's just at the concept level. And there are other times when investments get made after there's real customers and it's been proven out a little bit more. So both definitely happen. Most investors, of course, would prefer that there be proof, and the best proof is actual paying customers. And that's usually better for you as the entrepreneur in the sense that you will be able to negotiate a better deal on the investment once you have some proof points, once you have actual customers, once you prove that there's market demand and that people are willing to pay for the product. If you have that, it'll be to your advantage as an entrepreneur because you'll be able to negotiate a better deal on the capital. So that's my answer on that. So your question is, are investors willing to take a risk on potential? Is your specific question there at the end. And the answer is yes. Investors are always taking a risk on potential, but investors also are looking to mitigate risk where they can. And if you have some paying customers, then that helps to mitigate the risk, which makes you more likely to receive investment and makes you much more likely to be able to negotiate terms for that investment that you'll be happy with as the entrepreneur.
That actually kind of balances quite nicely with one of the other boxes that we have in the pitch submission, which is summary of the market. So it's not necessarily, if you don't currently have customers and you are in MVP stage, how can these teams best describe their market?
How can they best describe their market? Well, of course, that's going to depend a little bit on the particular venture and the particular market.
Is there considerations when a team or a startup is pitching? Is there specific considerations they should take into account when summarizing their market?
Make it simple, make it clear.
Perfect. I have lots of questions coming in for you, Bret. Where have we got here? Okay, so this is from Christopher. Our project has an electronic prototype. We're still working on the final product, but we don't know the final price yet. But our big goal is to offer this solution so that could be cheaper for smallholders and they can buy it. how could I prove that my final goal is to reduce cost of this solution?
Yeah, so sometimes this is called forward pricing, meaning what could the price of this be a year from now or 2 years from now? Because usually once you get scale, then the cost of your product can go down, right? But before you have scale, then your cost of producing the product is high. So it's a very common thing that, right now our cost of producing the product is, honestly, it's too high for what people are willing to pay. But once we have scale, then our price of producing the product, our cost of producing the product will be low enough that we'll be able to sell the product at competitive price, right? It's a very common thing. When Fred Smith started FedEx, there's no way he could actually deliver packages overnight for $25. But he knew that once he had scale, he'd be able to deliver packages overnight for $25. And so he presented investors with a plan that says that, for the first year, we're going to be losing money on every shipment because we're offering overnight shipping for $25, but it's going to cost us $45. But we're going to do that for a year because once we get enough customers on board, then we'll have scale such that our cost of making an overnight delivery will be $15 and we'll be selling it for $25. So this idea of forward pricing, this idea of pricing a product based on what it should sell for in 2 years once we have scale and the economic value that it will deliver to customers when we can sell it to them for that price, very common. So, my answer, Christopher, is just simply be honest with the investors about that. Just have a slide that says, right now, these widgets cost us, $18 to make, which we know is too expensive for smallholders. But we have a plan by which we're going to get to scale. And once we get to scale, we'll be able to make them for $2, which will allow us to sell them for $4, which is exactly the right price for smallholders.
Brilliant. Thank you, Bret. Christopher says thank you. Francisco is asking, what are your suggestions to improve my pitch delivery if we are struggling with some technical feasibility of our prototype or solution? In other words, we don't have good results yet.
So if I'm understanding your paragraph correctly, I'm going to assume you've identified a problem and you've identified a solution. Right now, the product isn't exactly working right. But you have confidence that you can make the product work right. Is this, tell me, raise a flag or something if this is true. Post it in the, Francisco, is that correct? Yeah, great. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so let's see. I mean, I think that's okay, right? In that it's more important. So the worst thing is having a product that works great, but it doesn't solve a problem that anybody cares about, right? That's actually far worse. And so identifying a problem that is worth solving and sort of designing a solution to that problem and having confidence that it will work, that's actually a pretty decent place to be in. And then, you just simply say, that we expect that after 3 months of clinical trials or whatever it is, that we will have a final functioning product. So I think, don't lie. In other words, be honest about the fact that that there are still some challenges on the product side, but make it a great story about the problem, the fact that the problem is worth solving, the fact that you have identified a solution, you've got the right team, and you're marching down the path of refining the product itself.
Brilliant. So I have a question, Brett. So one of the something that we ask people to identify is a summary of their potential challenges. Now we also ask people within their summary of their business model, to take into account their business model, which is short, medium, and long term. And that is obviously within that you should be able to at least predict some challenges that you will face. Is there kind of some set challenges that people should take into account that they may face over short, medium, and long term business modeling and plans? Is there kind of like in a business, be it especially when it's in social entrepreneurship, are there challenges that you've seen that are quite common amongst social innovations? And we're now living in a world which is like, you want to have a great startup, but it has to be socially conscious and sustainable. Are there challenges that every entrepreneur should take into account that may be on their horizon within 2 to 3 to 5 years?
Well, again, I'm not sure how to answer that in a generalized way because it's obviously going to be different for different ventures. I will say that in the social entrepreneurship arena, that a common problem is an entrepreneur from one culture trying to impose what he or she thinks is a great solution on people from another culture, right? We see that a lot in the social entrepreneurship world. That some privileged white kid from America, flies to East Africa and tries to impose upon East Africans what they think the right solution to their problems is. It's a common point of failure in the social sector, and so this is one of the reasons why having customers, having case studies, having testimonial quotes carries a lot of weight because it shows that you've spent the time to really understand the local needs and that you have empirical data that you are actually addressing the needs of the local beneficiaries. I don't know. Prompt me some more, Chelsea, because I'm not sure I'm answering your question yet.
No worries. I'll move on to Anna's question. How to show the potential in situations data is hard to achieve due to the lack of previous studies in the region. Anna, I'm not sure I understand the question. How to show the potential in situation data is hard to achieve. Oh, okay, so I think what Anna is trying to say here is that she potentially... how to take some data that is potentially limited and show potential using limited data due to a lack of data. So basically, how can you capitalize on a small amount of data to show potential?
I think you just have to show the data that you have and state with confidence that even though the sample size is small, that you have confidence that this data extrapolates. I don't know any other way around it than that.
I guess I think what I would suggest maybe is, Anna, if you could maybe start creating data yourself, i.e. going out and speaking to more people and speaking to experts within the field, where you maybe even try and tip it in your favor and look for exactly the data that you want to prove your point. But always try and look for a balanced argument, obviously. Something that we ask people to take into account is their impact on people and impact on the environment. How can people do that? We're living in a time of you walk down the street and you're probably having an impact on the environment in a negative way. Is there a way in which teams can show their impact in a successful way? Is that kind of working in the social entrepreneurship arena? Is there kind of metrics that people can fall back on? Is there specific metrics that we can look at to show the impact that they're having?
You asking me that question?
Yeah.
I thought you were the impact metrics expert.
Oh, not quite, but we do actually have. Just going to plug a future AMA here, people.
There we go. There we go.
We do have an AMA on metrics in a couple of weeks if you're looking for more granular detailing on that.
Mostly what I know about impact metrics is that they're very, very difficult. That, but to me, the financial model is the easy part. The figuring out the impact model and the impact metrics is the hard part.
Mm-hmm. Stay tuned for that session, people.
Yeah, there we go. There we
go. Anna came back and said she meant how to be confident in empirical data.
If you're not confident in it, then don't talk about it. You should only talk about data that you have confidence in.
Mm-hmm. It's a clear and simple response there. That is incredibly true. If Anna, if there's something that you specifically want to divulge into that, don't forget Marie can help you with things like that. Marie is our engagement officer for anyone who doesn't already know on the call. I have a question from Sajeev. It's often said that having competitors shows that there is a market for your product. But what if your competitors are bigger and could implement your idea easier and faster than you? How would you handle that threat or risk?
So yes, first of all, let me just say that I agree with the first sentence you have there, which is that having competitors shows that there's a market for your product. Completely agree with that sentence. So do you all Chelsea, do you guys do the business model canvas in this program? You do.
We do.
So the business model canvas has a box on it about secret sauce. Yes. Is yours? There's a couple different versions of the canvas that float around.
Yeah.
But most of the versions have something about secret sauce or what's your competitive differentiation. So there's usually a box that is about unique value proposition, and that one is from a customer perspective, what is unique about your offering. And then the box next to that is secret sauce, which is from a competitor's perspective, what is it that you have that is difficult for a competitor to copy? And this is often a really hard one for early stage startups, right? Because the reality is, for an early stage startup, you don't have 15 granted patents around the world. You don't have a team of intellectual property attorneys, and you don't have any exclusive distribution agreements. And so for early stage startups, it's often hard to come up with, some statement about something you have that'll be difficult for competitors to copy. That's the reality. So I guess part of what I'm saying is that the problem you're articulating, Sajeev, is a very common problem, and it's almost a universal problem with early stage startups. So usually with early stage startups, the things that you have that your competitors don't have is, first of all, you have that one of your competitive differentiators is that you've got a founder or a founding team that is just incredibly passionate about this cause, right? That's one of your differentiators. And another differentiator that you have is that you also have agility. So your larger competitors don't have the kind of agility you have, that you could pivot on a Tuesday, whereas your larger competitors, might start scheduling a meeting about having a meeting about having a meeting about changing the direction of a product offering, right? So you've got agility that your larger competitors will never have. So those are usually the things that legitimately do give you a little bit of defensibility against competitors. And if you can do something like line up an exclusive distribution agreement, right, where the largest distributor in the sector has signed an exclusive agreement with you that they will only distribute your products, not the competitor products. That's legit. So if you can do that, then mention it. But it's almost always true that there are larger competitors who could crush you tomorrow. And that in many respects, I'd be more worried if there weren't larger competitors who could crush you tomorrow, because that would mean that there's no demand for what it is you're doing. One last point on this, Sajeev, which is that if you look at the reasons why startups fail, being crushed by a competitor is actually fairly low on the list. It's not even in the top 10 reasons that startups fail. Startups tend to fail because they run out of money. They fail because they don't adequately solve a problem that customers actually have. They fail from lack of focus. They fail from lack of the economic model working. In other words, they realize too late that their customer acquisition cost is higher than the lifetime value of a customer. Those are all the primary reasons that startups fail. Being crushed by a competitor is not on the top 10 list. And so my advice to you as an entrepreneur is be aware of the competition, be aware of how you're differentiated from the competition, but don't spend every day obsessing about the competition. Instead, obsess about solving real problems that customers have. If you obsess about that, you'll be successful.
Brilliant. In terms of, so again, we want to see from teams that that it's not just an idea and a concept that they have, there's real weight behind what they're proposing with their solution. Is there, and I'm trying to keep it general for everyone because everyone's doing such different things, but in your experience, are there considerations when it comes to scaling a startup that you can impart on these teams?
Well, scaling is hard. Is that helpful, Chelsea? So I think that I think one of the hardest things about being a CEO of any organization is that you have to have bifocal thinking. You have to be both thinking about today, and you also have to be thinking about where the organization needs to be 3 years from now or 5 years from now. And you need to be thinking about how each of your decisions today needs to align with the big picture vision of where you want the organization to be 3 years from now and 5 years from now. And I do think it's one of the most challenging, difficult things about being a CEO, and especially a startup CEO. There's an expression that to survive, you have to think in the present, but to win, you have to think in the future. So to survive, you have to meet payroll this week, but to win, you have to think about where you want the organization to be in 3 years from now and 5 years from now, right? And so part of what that means is that if your vision is that 3 years from now, you want to be an organization with 10 times the scale that you currently have, and hopefully that is your vision, because that's how you get to impact, right? And I assume that everybody on this call is very passionate about producing impact, right? That's the reason you would be in a program like this, would be if you're passionate about impact. And impacting, 8 families, that's nice, but what we're here for is to impact 800,000 families and then 8 million families, right? That's what we're here for. And so thinking about how the decisions you make today need to align with the big picture vision of how we create impact at scale is the key thing. So, think about that with regard to the organization. In other words, be recruiting people who you think have the potential to be hired today as an individual contributor, and also can be managing 100 people 2 years from now, because that's a key part of scale. Make sure that as you're developing the economic model for the venture, that you have an idea of what the economics of this venture look like today, and what the economics of this venture look like at steady state with impact at scale. Because they probably will look different, and hopefully they'll look better, right? That what we all want is an organization that benefits from scale, where the economics of the organization benefit with scale, right? That's what we want. But I've seen people start companies where they didn't really think about that. And too late, they realized that the way the economic model that they have in place doesn't really benefit with scale. So, they're losing a little bit of money when they're small. And once they scale up, now they're losing a lot of money. And that's not the goal.
Everyone, I just want to remind you, we have a couple minutes left. So if you do have questions for Bret, please get them in now in either Q&A at the bottom or the chat. You've got a couple minutes left to get your questions in and get your advice in. I have some final questions from our side. So we have so many teams in the TFF Challenge. We have people from all different parts of maturity, be it project, idea, concept stage. And I think a lot of people that haven't done business models before, they have an amazing idea, they have an amazing concept, they're really trying to solve a problem. What should be considered in a business model for them, for the early stage concepts and ideas? What do they need to be considering in a business model?
So my definition of a business model is the rationale by which an organization creates, delivers, and captures value. So we create value by solving a problem that customers have. We deliver that value through resellers, or we deliver it direct to consumers, or we deliver it through NGOs, right? We need to have a way that we deliver that value. And we capture that value in the form of profits, meaning that we have to have a way that we're providing $10 worth of value, and it's only costing us $8 to provide $10 worth of value, right? So so for me, the definition of a business model is it's the rationale by which an organization creates, delivers, and captures value. So that's it. There's only sort of subcomponents to it that are represented on the business model canvas. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, all that matters is, are we creating value by solving a problem that customers have? Do we have a way of delivering that value to customers? And do we have a way of capturing that value in the sense that we can provide it at a cost less than what it's worth to the person we're delivering it to?
Brilliant. Yeah. That's great. That's very simple and very clear. So this is I've got a twofold question here. So as an investor yourself, what do you look for in a pitch? And then I want to add on another question, which is, where does it go? Which kind of comes to that. When it comes to a pitch deck, how important is branding on a pitch deck and the consistency of branding within that?
I personally don't care.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not, I like pretty logos, but a pretty logo is not going to make or break the business. There are a lot of very successful companies out there with really ugly branding. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have you seen Amazon? Terrible.
So
have you seen eBay? eBay has the worst branding in history.
So true. It's important. No, it's important to reiterate that. I've seen many people get so hung up on making things look pretty, and pretty isn't going to solve the world's problems. We've seen that over.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I like pretty. I don't want to make it sound like I don't like pretty. Yes. And I do think that once you start building a business, that things like brand consistency are important. So I don't want to diminish any of that. But in terms of what really matters in terms of my investment decision, it just doesn't. I don't care. We can hire a designer. That's not the challenge. The challenge is: are we solving a real problem? Do we have a legitimate way in which we solve that problem? And do we have an economic model that says that this is scalable? That's all I care about.
Brilliant. Love it. So so more of a generalized question, as an investor, what do you look for in a pitch?
Did I just say it?
Yeah, I know, because top three things.
Why are you exactly the right entrepreneur for this venture? So I want to hear that you have the passion and dedication and grit to see this thing through to success. And so I want to hear something about why you are exactly the right entrepreneur for this venture. And that may just be, I'm the right entrepreneur because I've got a lot of passion about this topic. I really care about this. That's fine. But that's a version of why are you exactly the right entrepreneur for this venture. Now, if you happen to tell me you also have a PhD in microbiology, well, that'd be good too. And again, that's all. Brownie points. But that's all part of why are you exactly the right entrepreneur for this venture. So for me, that's number one. Number two is, have you identified a problem we're solving? Mm-hmm. Number three is, do you legitimately have a solution to this problem? And do you have some proof that you have a solution to this problem? And in a perfect world, paying customers is the best way to show that you have proof, right? Mm-hmm. Not everybody is at that stage, but I'm just saying that that's the best way to prove that you have a solution to this problem is that customers are actually paying you money to buy your product or service from them because they want that problem solved. And then the third thing is just that the economics look like they'll work out. Mm-hmm. That the number one cause of startup death is finding out too late that your customer acquisition cost is higher than the lifetime value of a customer. That's mm-hmm. the number one cause of startup death. And every entrepreneur underestimates what their customer acquisition cost is going to be, and every entrepreneur overestimates what the lifetime value of a customer is going to be. Every entrepreneur thinks that customers are just going to line up to buy their product because it's so amazing. And selling your product is always much, much harder than you think it's going to be. Mm-hmm. So having some notion that you've done your homework and that you believe you have an economic model in place that has a chance of success. And as I said, sort of fundamentally that economic model distills down to getting customers and making money from those customers. So to me, those are the top things. If you can, provide me some proof of those, whatever that is, 4 things, then it's definitely an investment-worthy operation.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your time as always, Bret. You've answered everyone's questions absolutely beautifully, and I know everyone is very thankful for your time.
Do we have time for me to tell one more story, a quick one?
Yes, go on. Okay. I'm sure everyone appreciates it.
So one of the best lessons I ever had pitching was this is several years ago, and I worked really, really hard on my slide deck. And let me tell you, this was the most beautiful slide deck in the history of slide decks. I mean, this deck was gorgeous. And I worked really, really hard on it. And I had screenshots, and there were sections where if I went really fast through the slides, it almost looked like the software was functioning in the screenshots, and a great logo on there, and I had really consistent colors. And it was
pretty.
It was an amazing slide deck. And I went in, first venture firm that I went in and pitched, they absolutely loved it. I mean, every slide, they were like, this is awesome. We are definitely interested in investing in this. And I walked out of that presentation high-fiving myself about how brilliant I was and how brilliant my slides were. And I got home and I got an email from the senior partner, and he said, thanks so much for coming in today. We're definitely interested in investing. Like to have you see this partner at this other venture capital firm and see whether maybe they'd like to co-invest with us. And I said, oh, guys, I'm so brilliant. Not only did they want to invest, they referred me to somebody else who might want to invest. And so I went in to see this other venture capital firm about a week later. And I walked into that guy's office thinking that I was going to just impress him with my amazing, beautiful slides again. And I set up in his office, set up my laptop, plugged the projector into my laptop. And this other venture capital guy sits down in the conference room, and he turns to me and he goes, close that goddamn laptop up. I'm so sick and tired of entrepreneurs who come in here and they show me their pretty slides. What I want to know is, can you tell me using words and words alone why what you're working on is so compelling that I would want to invest? And I went, but my slides. And it was the good news is he invested. But it was a really important lesson, I think, that you've got to be good at telling the story. And the story has to stand on its own. And if you have some pretty slides to, kind of like back that up while you're telling the story, that's great. But the slides aren't going to sell the deal for you. You have to sell the deal, and you have to sell the deal by telling a crisp, clear, and compelling story about what you're working on and why it matters.
Brilliant. You couldn't have rounded off that session any better than that, Bret. So Jeeva saying thanks a lot for your insights, Bret.
No problem. I love this stuff. I live for this stuff.
Will we be seeing you in Malaysia?
You couldn't keep me away, Chelsea.
You hear that, people? Put in your winning pitches and you can meet Bret in the flesh, okay?
Absolutely. Anybody who wants to buy me a glass of wine is welcome to. Do they have wine in Malaysia? I guess we'll find out.
We'll find out. Oh, well, thank you as always, Bret. It's been an absolute pleasure. And yes, stay tuned, people. And don't forget about the metrics, impact on metrics next week.
There you go. All right, guys. Good luck. Enjoyed it. See ya. Bye.
Thank you.